Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mon Carne de Poche. This is Steven, your history fanatic who just loves to overshare with you guys on random historical facts. In our last episode, we explored the patron-client labor system of colonial Mexico City, where work was more than just a paycheck. It was a social contract. We saw how plebe relationships with patrons bound them to economic and social expectations. However, today we will be once again shifting gears to look at a different path of society in colonial Mexico City, and that is the lives of upwardly mobile castas. Alrighty, so picture this. Benito Romero, a mulatto who worked tirelessly to become a successful merchant. His story is one of ambition and determination. But like many other castas who rose through the ranks, his success was fragile, threatened by financial insecurity and social limitations. In the end, Benito's hard-won fortune slipped through his fingers, and he unfortunately found himself back where he started. So, in today's episode, we will be exploring the unique challenges faced by castas who managed to climb the social ladder. While some found success through hard work, trade, and strategic marriage, they were never truly free from the pressures of their race and social status. Even a small misstep could send them back. So, as we dive into these stories of fragile success, I want y'all to consider something. How much has really changed? You know, do the opportunities we have today come with similar hidden challenges? And does rising up mean leaving behind the safety of familiar networks only to find new obstacles in the way? Let's think about that, And let's begin by exploring how castas found their ways to the top in a society that constantly reminded them of their place. From small businesses to building social connections, these upwardly mobile individuals pushed the boundaries of what was possible for their class at the time. Let's see what it took for them to rise and how quickly that rise could unravel. And just as one last quick important note, I do want to let you all know that I'll be referencing some of the research by Dr. Robert Cope. He was the expert of colonial Mexico and Latin America, and I'll be quoting his work. So just so you all know, if you don't have his book, highly recommend it. Go look for it. Alrighty. So in this section, we will be talking about the rise of upwardly mobile castas. In a society built on rigid racial and social hierarchies, social mobility was rare, but not uncommon. A few determined castas found ways to climb the ladder, creating lives beyond what colonial society expected of them. For many, this meant starting small businesses as artisans, food vendors, or even tradespeople. Casta women in particular made notable contributions to this. They built small enterprises that supported their families and sometimes even provided a legacy for future generations. According to some documents found, many castas used small trade and artisan roles to amass modest fortunes, especially women who became financially independent, which is something that at times we don't think about or even associate with women back in that time. For other castas, strategic marriages played a key role in their climb. By marrying into a Spanish family or forming alliance with influential patrons, they accessed better credit, new opportunities, and a slight boost in social standing. But these relationships were delicate, and the benefits could quickly vanish. So while castas found ways to rise through trade, connections, and marriage, the success was often fragile. Their status could be lost just as quickly as it was earned, and they had to navigate constant social and economic pressures to maintain their gains. In this next section, let's look at how this delicate success often came with financial insecurity, debt, and dependency on unstable credit networks. Let's see how a promising start could easily turn into a cycle of economic struggle. And unfortunately, I think it's also something we see a lot of in our current day and age. So this next section is called Fragile Success and Financial Insecurity. While a few castas managed to rise above their station, success for them was often built on shaky ground. Even as they achieved upward mobility, financial insecurity lingered over their lives, and a single setback could undo years of hard work. Many upwardly mobile castas found themselves caught in cycles of debt, relying heavily on credit to maintain their new status. In colonial Mexico City, cash flow was a constant challenge. For those who ran small businesses, cash shortages were common and credit became a lifeline. But this reliance on credit came with risks, just as it does nowadays. Without reliable cash resources, castas often had to pawn their possessions or take on high-interest loans to stay afloat. The documents that Dr. Cope mentions in his work describe how many casta entrepreneurs were forced to frequently pawn goods or seek loans to cover basic expenses. Let's consider the case of Nicolas Hernandez, a mestizo shop owner who used his profits to invest in his business but struggled to make ends meet. Hernandez frequently pawned items from his shop, leveraging everything he owned just to keep his business running. Like many upwardly mobile castas, he walked a financial tightrope that could unravel at any moment. In an economy with limited financial protections, the line between prosperity and poverty was thin. Success might even mean expanding one's business or acquiring modest wealth, but it also came with the constant threat of debt. If trade slowed or unexpected costs arose, even the most successful castas could quickly find themselves in financial ruin. Credit networks were essential, but they were also unstable. Unlike today, where we have formal banking systems, castas relied on informal loans often extended by friends, family, or other merchants. These credit networks were fragile, dependent on trust and reputation. A missed payment or a falling out could close doors to future opportunities. But what about legacy? For upward mobile castas, the struggle to build a stable life wasn't just for their own sake, it was about creating something lasting for their families. So in this next section, we'll see how castas used wills and inheritance to pass on their achievements, hoping to give future generations a better chance at stability, and why even that was often a fragile hope. Alrighty, this next section is called The Role of Wills and Inheritance. For many upwardly mobile castas, success wasn't just about their own achievements. It was about building something lasting for their families. After working so hard to climb the social ladder, they hoped to pass on their gains and provide a stable future for their children. In a world with few safety nets, inheritance became a key part of casta strategy. Wills revealed a lot about what mattered to upwardly mobile castas. Through these documents, we see their hopes, ambitions, and the realities of their economic gains. Many wills included small businesses, modest property, or valuable household items that castas hoped would give their children a better start. But as the documents note, family wealth for castas was often very fragile. Even with careful planning, inheritance could quickly dissipate. When there were multiple heirs, assets like property or business profits had to be divided, often leaving each heir with only a fraction of the original wealth. The document also highlights that multiple heirs often diluted family wealth, making it difficult to sustain economic progress across generations. And yet, these wills weren't just about material assets. For some castas, leaving an inheritance was a way of passing on their identity and social status. By leaving specific possessions or naming heirs to a family business, parents hope to anchor their children in a modest but hard-won social standing that they had achieved. But there was always an element of risk. Inheritance didn't guarantee social mobility for the next generation. Economic downturns, family disputes, or even shifts in colonial policy could erode these assets. Many castas found that while they could work hard to accumulate wealth, keeping it within the family for future generations was a difficult challenge altogether. And honestly, I think that's still a very common issue that many families face. I see it everywhere around our society. And yeah, it's just something that we still struggle with. So in this next section, I'm going to explore how castas tried to overcome these limitations by building social networks and connections with the right alliances. They could strengthen their family's place in society by providing protection and stability beyond what material wealth alone could offer. So, social networks and connections. In a society where race and class determined so much, upwardly mobile castas knew that material wealth alone wasn't enough to secure their place. To protect their status, many relied on something equally valuable: which was social networks and connections. Strategic relationships, especially with Spaniards, could offer Castas access to credit, legal support, and business opportunities they wouldn't have otherwise. These relationships often went beyond simple friendships. Casta families sometimes arranged marriages with Spaniards or influential individuals in the hopes of cementing their social standing and opening doors for their children. Dr. Cope notes that Castas who were well connected tended to fare better as they could rely on these networks for financial support and legal protection when needed. But as beneficial as these connections could be, they were also very delicate. Castas who gained access to elite circles faced constant reminders of their own limitations. Social discrimination and prejudice remained barriers, keeping them from fully entering the upper class of colonial society. One notable example of this is Jerónimo de Vega y Vique, a mulata who inherited a substantial estate from her Spanish father. Despite her wealth, she struggled to fully integrate into elite society, facing racial and social limitations that kept her at arm's length. Her story is a reminder that even with wealth and connections, Castas were often still outsiders in Spanish hierarchy. These networks offered Castas a measure of stability and support, but they also reinforced a sense of dependence. For many upwardly mobile individuals, every connection, every alliance came with its own set of expectations and social obligations. Navigating these relationships required care, as a single misstep could damage their reputation and access to resources. So while social networks provided Castas with critical support, they were also a reminder of the precariousness of their status. So in this next section, we'll see how even the most successful Castas faced racial barriers that limited their social mobility, and we'll look at cases of Castas who tried and often failed to redefine themselves as Spanish to gain more freedom. The section is called Racial Barriers and Limits of Social Mobility. As we've seen, wealth and social networks could help Castas climb the social ladder, but they could never completely erase the racial divisions embedded in colonial society. Even the most successful Castas faced a harsh reality no matter how high they rose. The boundaries of the caste system continued to restrict their freedoms. In colonial Mexico, race wasn't just a matter of appearance, it was a powerful social marker that dictated where you could go, what you could achieve, and how others saw you. For upward mobile Castas, every step forward was met often with renewed discrimination, as society reminded them of the limits imposed by their racial background. Some Castas attempted to navigate these barriers by seeking official recognition as Spanish. By doing so, they hoped to sidestep the restrictions placed on their class and access privileges reserved for Spanish folks. However, these requests were rarely granted, leaving Castas with few options to advance beyond their racial classification, although it did happen. One such case was that of Mateo de Aguilar, a mulatto jeweler who had achieved remarkable success. Despite his accomplishments, Mateo remained painfully aware of his social limits. He petitioned to be recognized as Spanish, hoping to expand his business and secure better opportunities, but his efforts were ultimately in vain, as the rigid caste system rejected his request. These racial barriers weren't just symbolic, they had real material consequences for Castas. Spaniards had exclusive access to certain government positions, prestigious trade licenses, and high-level business opportunities. For Castas, these avenues were permanently closed, forcing them to operate within the limited sphere allowed to them. For upwardly mobile Castas, these limits were a constant reminder that success came with conditions. Every opportunity, every connection had to be carefully managed within the framework of their racial identity. True social freedom was out of reach, no matter how wealthy or influence they had managed to accumulate. And this brings us to our final section, where we'll reflect on the resilience of Castas who strived for success in a society that often denied them full recognition. We'll look at the lasting impact of their achievements and the complex legacy they left behind in the history of colonial Mexico. So, conclusion and reflection. Today, we've looked closely at the lives of upwardly mobile Castas in colonial Mexico City. a group who, despite the odds, managed to carve out lives of modest success. Through hard work, strategic alliances, and family legacies, they rose in a society that constantly reminded them of their place. We saw how fragile their success could be. While wealth and connections helped Castas climb the social ladder, racial boundaries often restricted their freedom. Even the most successful individuals were reminded that ultimately colonial society saw them through the lens of their caste or casta. In a way, these stories resonate with us today. Upward mobility, whether in colonial Mexico or modern-day society, often comes with hidden barriers, social expectations, economic challenges, and even unspoken biases that shape who has access to success. So, let's ask ourselves, how much has really changed? I feel like in many ways we haven't. For upwardly mobile castas, the struggle wasn't just about accumulating wealth. It was about securing their gains in a system designed to hold them back. Today, many people still face a similar balancing act. How do we define success when social mobility is limited? And what invisible boundaries might we still face in our own lives? I know this is a discussion my friends and I have constantly because we deal with it on a daily basis. So, think about it. Share your thoughts down below in the comment section. But thank you for joining me on this little journey through the lives of colonial Mexico's upwardly mobile castas. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts below. How do you think social mobility has evolved and what challenges remain? Let's keep this conversation going. And in our next episode, we'll dive into one of the most dramatic events of colonial Mexico City's history. And it wasn't the first, but it was the second, actually. And that is the riot of 1692. What drove people to rise up, and what does this uprising reveal about the tensions simmering beneath colonial society? I know I briefly touched on this matter in the first episode, but I didn't fully expand on it, and I apologize for that. But enough people have DM'd me asking me for more details regarding it, so I will go into it. The riot is an event that shook the city and exposed fractures in colonial rule. So stay tuned, and see you next time on Mon Carne de Posh. Your friend, Steve. Bye.